What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Fit, Healthy, and most of all, Happy podcast. As always, I'm your coach and host, Josh, here with
his co-host and co-coach, KG, and I'm in the house.
We're fired up. We got another incredible episode of Motivation Monday for you. If you guys can see, I got my Bills shirt on. As the time this comes out, the Bills will be playing. It's football season. I think that's a reason to smile. We're in a little bit of a heat wave here, but fall is coming up, and we got some incredible questions, especially related around that. When I asked for more questions from everyone a few weeks ago, we got a flood of phenomenal questions. So I want to thank every single person who took the time to submit in a question. And we noticed a lot of themes about people wanting to plan their journey forward, whether it be just bulking, cutting, maintaining, recomping, whatever it is. So a lot of it will be centered around that. And we're going to help you with your journey going forward in this episode. So just a little bit of a prelude of the goodness that is to come. But if you've been around this podcast for a while, you know that we like to start our episodes off with just a quote that really struck us, that was really powerful this week, and to tell you kind of why, and to hope that it will provide some benefit to you in your life as well. And we'll go ahead and start with Kyle.
So my quote is, "Complexity is the enemy of execution. Aim to keep it simple and stick to the basics to set yourself up for success." And I'm just going back to the basics here with this quote because I firmly believe it, and I think that it just says a lot. I think so many times, as I've mentioned in the past, people feel the need to overcomplicate things, and I think a lot of times people want to say they're doing the most complicated thing and for bragging rights, and it sounds unique and sexy when you share that with someone. But I've learned over and over again, just sticking to the basics, doing what works, what's tried and true. It's not the prettiest thing. It's not the thing that you're going to necessarily be bragging to someone at work about, but it's what gets the results. And yeah, so that's my amazing quote for this week. I really hope it sticks out to you. I hope that you learn something from it, and hopefully you can relate to it and apply it in your life in some way or another.
Yeah, I think this quote is a really fun spin on, even I've heard the quote, "Perfection is the enemy of good." And I think it's just a good example where it's so easy to make things unnecessarily complex. And even with our coaching, with our approach to fitness, we take a really realistic approach, because if you get in there and you're really stressing over the optimum amount of protein sources and where your amino acids are coming from and where your micronutrient profiles are at, and you're trying to understand and peak every aspect of your blood work, it seems really incredibly complex and unnecessary. Whereas if you tell someone, eat healthy, train hard, and really just have balance, like that's how you can see way better results and be consistent. So it's a great thought and a great quote, really not to overcomplicate the small things. And oftentimes it's just about getting started. People will really spend all day thinking about what they would do in the gym. It's uncomfortable being there, this and that, when the real thing you should be fixated on is getting there, because that's that little task, that action that is actually going to lead to a big result. So I think that is incredibly well said. For my quote, I just watched Equalizer 3. It has Denzel Washington. It's kind of like a John Wick-esque movie. I kind of enjoyed the first two. Like, it's your typical kind of like dude who's super intense at like killing people and getting retribution on bad guys. So it's a fun little watch. But what it made me think of is Denzel Washington is an incredible speaker. He has some really, really good, like there's motivational videos of some of the speeches he gave to colleges. And it just motivated me to get back, listen to that, because I found a lot of really good content in there and good motivation. And in that speech, in one of his famous quotes, he said that when you pray for rain, you got to deal with the mud too. That's a part of it. And I think that quote is so fun, because oftentimes when you think, even today, me and Kyle were talking, we're saying you got to be careful what you wish for, because sometimes you get it. But you have to understand that sometimes when you want to achieve something, you have to understand there will be mud alongside that. There will be challenges, there will be obstacles you need to overcome, some good, some bad. Like mud could be a good thing or bad thing depending on how you want to look at it. But even as you begin to get super, super fit, you may notice that you do need to get new clothes because you have a much different shape. And of course, you're going to look phenomenal in those new clothes, and these are good problems, but these are things you may need to be aware of, or you might need to adjust different factors of your life or whatever it may be. And sometimes it can be harder factors as well too. But I think it's a good point to not just set these big goals. Like, it's so easy to say, I'm going to be super fit, and then just expect nothing to go wrong, nothing to be hard. And sometimes you just got to think to yourself, when you come across those things that are hard, those challenges, say, there's just a little bit of the mud for me to get, like, kind of get to that objective I want to get to. So I just thought that was a great quote that I was happy to share.
Yeah, another random thought that I had from that is actually we are going to be doing our first Tough Mudder, which is super exciting. I know it's not relevant to Josh's quote, but it does have to do with mud. So we're really excited about that. And even just how Josh had mentioned, like, football season's coming up, which is great. Like, I know I've said it before, but I truly believe the best thing you can do is just have lots of different things to look forward to. Different seasons, different things, like I say, if you want to go do some sort of winter event and book a weekend to go do your favorite skiing adventure, like stuff like that. I love life. I think life is just to be valued, and there's so many amazing journeys and adventures, and they don't all have to cost tons of money, but even just getting out there. And even this Tough Mudder, we have our team going with us. We have Coach Armando, we have Coach Jason. We're preparing for this and going to be doing, even yesterday I was getting ready at the gym, and I was just thinking, I was like, man, we got this thing in a few weeks. I got to dial in. And, you start to get these different goals and ambitions and just try a bunch of different stuff. And I know that's a random thought there, but it's just been on the top of my head. And I feel like this is what gets people in the journey for the long run. You don't just do this quick phase to lose a bunch of weight, but you have these different obstacles, these different goals, these different ambitions, and you start to enjoy it. And that's what you do. So I just wanted to share that random thought with you as well.
Incredibly well said. And as we jump into thoughts, I'm going to share one that I found today. And once again, this is Chris Williamson's email has just been absolutely amazing. And we're happy to build up and recommend other people we've watched that we've really enjoyed. And one thing he had shared is that there are 3 of the most underrated performance enhancers on the planet that most people don't take advantage of and that are completely free. And those are enthusiasm, sleep, and curiosity. And we mentioned before about the importance of being curious and really seeking to have an understanding. And that's what we try to do with this podcast, is we won't just say, this is what you need to do. We'll say why. We'll explain the mistakes, the misconceptions, the rare examples where it may be a little bit different, because being curious about things is just amazing. When you're a little kid, you have that childlike curiosity. You're always wanting to learn, to understand. You're not scared to ask silly questions, but that is how you have a deeper understanding of things. And especially with fitness, with self-development, with trying new tasks, even being curious and being like, oh, maybe I'll love horse riding. I've never tried it. And you have a friend that does a course, who knows? Or maybe rock climbing, or you never know. And being curious is so good. Having enthusiasm towards tasks, just being happy. And then of course, sleep. Like, sleep is one of the first things people will cut aside and throw away and underplay the importance of. But we've said it before, like, being sleep deprived is like literally almost on par with being intoxicated, which is crazy. So you can give yourself a big advantage by taking care of that sleep. And I know everyone has unique circumstances, but I'm pretty sure that 99.9% of us, if we tried, could do a little bit better with our sleep, turning off phones, getting to bed a little bit earlier, making our room darker, making our room colder, like having more of a consistent schedule. There's always what we can do. And even like just having that higher level thinking. We were talking to someone who one night they said they got no sleep because they were up watching Netflix, a show they really liked and was amazing. Then the next day we saw them again, and Kyle said, hey, I hope you got some sleep. And they're like, oh, I did it again. And it's one of those things where you got to be like, okay, no addictive shows at this time, or it's 1 episode max or whatever, but just a good reminder to not underplay these 3 and really think in your life how you can inject more of them, because they are going to build you up and make you feel great. And I thought that was a really fun way of kind of thinking about it. So once again, that is enthusiasm, sleep, and curiosity.
Even on that little subject there, Josh and I were talking as well, and he said never miss twice. Like, he just brought that up to me, and I just thought about that pretty intensely, because I feel like that is what separates a lot of people on their fitness journey. It's those who potentially, let's say, self-sabotage and do these things they're not happy with. They kind of go down the rabbit hole of just continuously doing it. Whereas, like, we're all humans. Like, I've made mistakes where I messed up my food intake. Maybe on a Sunday I didn't hit my protein, or like even just maybe didn't plan for workouts. But like, my biggest thing is just, it does not happen a second time in a row. Like, it's just, that's the best way to just approach it. And honestly, that's the best way to stay accountable. And I did want to share that because we learned this principle. And to me, it's a game changer, because when I mess up, I don't beat myself up over it. I learn my lesson. I say, I'm just not going to do it again. And that's where I feel like so many people struggle. But anything else to add there? I do have one other thought.
That's it for me. Let's hear the last thought.
So, I mean, I've had some reflections. Like, we've been doing this, and I know we've said this a bit recently, like almost 10 years. This whole fitness journey thing, if you see, I'll put a screenshot if you're watching on YouTube. We created our YouTube channel just over 10 years ago, which has been an amazing journey. And like I look back, every either Tuesday or Sunday, I'll sit down with my journal for like 30 to 45 minutes and just think. And like yesterday when I did it, I just got a lot of different thoughts of how we stuck to this one thing. We've put everything we can into it and we've just showed up consistently. And that's not to brag. It's more so just the reason I'm bringing this up is because there have been a million different obstacles where we could have gone different directions. We could have gone with different opportunities. We get 5 to 20 emails a day with these different proposals and all these other things. And I get reached out to a lot from people who remember me from high school 10 years ago. Same with Josh from, high school, university and stuff. And I think they're pretty confused because they don't really see people do this, like put their full foot forward and just stay dialed in. And I know for people on their fitness journey, it's very hard to focus and to stay a direct path because you want to do the next best thing, the next sexiest thing that comes up. And like I was listening to a podcast from Alex Hermosi this morning, and there's a guy, the owner of Panda Express, I think like the food chain, and he built an incredible business, an incredible brand. And Hermosi had said it's pretty hard to suck when you do something for 45 years consistently, like day in and day out. And I just want to share that because once again, especially with dieting, especially with your workout routine, whatever it is that you do in life, it's so easy to just like take the next best thing and just like switch. I see so many people build a fitness page or build a YouTube and they're like, I'm going to do this for the next few years. Nobody really does it. So just a friendly reminder, like when you stay consistent, when you stay focused, when you just consistently show up, it's crazy what you can build. And I'm so happy with what we have, all of you listening, all of our amazing clients, basically over 3,500. And just, I'm very grateful to do what I do. And same with Josh. And we appreciate you all for being here. And just a random little thought, and hopefully this meant something to you.
Incredibly well said. Consistency is key. Consistency compounds. We said it before, and you can do amazing, amazing things by staying at it, being passionate, and definitely really thankful to see how much everything's come together. And once again, there's been a little bit of mud with that rain, but it's been really great to see that happen. And it's, even though rain doesn't seem like a positive thing, it can be if you really need it. So just the same, we're pretty happy with how everything's come. We thank everyone who tunes in and appreciates the podcast. And now we're going to transition to our client shout out this week. Who do we got?
So we have Daniel Wilson, and he's actually, funny enough, a high school friend. And he had reached out to me and said, I want some extra help. I want to just build my physique and build something I'm proud of. And I'm so happy with how everything's come. We are over 15 pounds down, going to start to do a bit of a reverse diet, replenish calories. We have a lot on the table, which I'm really excited about. But, he showed up, filled out a spreadsheet, consistently hit his workouts. When I chat with him, like there's no excuses. He's always looking for, different ways around the obstacles that come up. And, just planning wise, like you can see on the screen, if you are watching on YouTube, a bunch of different tips. You can see the photos as well. And you can also click down below to head to the Instagram to see what he has to say about the coaching, as well as just his overall journey and experience. And you can see the transformation that's taken place. But what really hit me was he had mentioned, he's 26 years old, and he said, I can't believe it took me until this age to start taking care of to start investing, to start to just fully put my best foot forward to just being fit, healthy, and overall happy. And, that just really kind of hit me because he had spent a few years just not exactly doing that. And I'm amazed at what has taken place. I'm so proud. If you are looking to get to your next level, like so many people don't realize, and I had this message from my client, Chelsea, and she sent it the other day, and she had said, she didn't think body recomp was a thing until it actually took place. And even you can see for Daniel, he just fully transformed, built muscle, lost fat. He's looking so much more confident. It isn't 100% a real thing, and we're happy to take care of you, but we are looking for a few people who are looking to do a body recomp where you lose fat, you build muscle, and you just fully transform your physique in the process. So 3 individuals, just make sure to send us a message with the keyword body recomp to our Instagram, Colossusfit, COLOSSUSFIT, and we can't wait to help some of you awesome people.
Yeah, no matter what your goal is, just in this episode, we're very comfortable to get you there, and doing it with the confidence of having a professional on your side is just the best feeling in the world. All the best athletes have coaches, and if you want to be the best version of yourself, the healthiest, the fittest, this is your chance to do it. So once again, don't miss out on this incredible opportunity. You can get all that info with that keyword in the show notes. Make sure to hit us up and we will take great care of you. But now we're going to jump into our mailbag with the first question of the week. So our first question is from Rachel Derling, and it is, I was wondering if you could talk about mini cuts. I want to cut about 3 pounds, but I'm not sure if I should jump into a deficit or slowly decrease my calories. Also, should I reverse diet after a mini cut? Thanks so much, guys. Mini cut sounds really appealing because instead of saying like, hey, you're going to be doing a ton of weight loss, you have a big deficit to do, it's like, it's just a mini cut. It's simple. And for me, most often, I think mini cuts are best utilized if you're looking to tidy up. So you're normally at a certain weight, you've been away, you've been on vacations, you've been living life, and you're like, oh, I'm up 5 pounds. Like, you can kind of attack that pretty quick, revert back to your normal weight, and you can have like an intensive 2-3 week period where you're doing like just under 2 pounds a week, and you get there pretty simply. So I find that sometimes where I will utilize them. I also will utilize them if people are doing a big bulk. I find it's pretty good process if you're bulking heavy and you're okay with putting on a lot of fat, to do a pretty intensive bulk for 6 weeks, then a 1 to 2 week mini like kind of break and mini cut, because that can help you also drive your calories down a little bit, tidy up your physique, and make sure you're just at a point where you still feel good. Then you can get back into that bulk and get a lot of the benefits of it. Now, the only problem is if you're always doing this, you could definitely hinder your ability to put on muscle, and it also can be very deceiving, because I could start a cut tomorrow and I could be 5 pounds lighter. How I would do that is I'd probably just have no dinner, I'd have half the calories, I'd have no carbs, and the scale would tell an entirely different picture, and it would not be representative of my true weight. Because if I'm just doing that, I have less food volume in me, I'm retaining less water. It naturally would make sense that my weight would decrease quite a lot. And people will get an affirmation usually from diets when they first start, because they will cut their calories and they'll cut their carbs, and they'll notice their scale weight does go down quite a lot. But you actually want your true weight to go down. Like if you're looking to remove fat, that's very different than just scale weight, and that is something you do need to be mindful of and have a consideration towards. Now, once again, it's hard to really narrow in, is this just water weight, is this body weight, but that's where I find measurements, photos will really do you a justice, and really being calculated with when you utilize these, because if you're too dramatic and you're doing them all the time, as I said, you're really going to kind of like limit your potential to put on muscle and maintain your physique, and you could end up spinning your wheels a little bit too much. You could be a little bit miserable. But that's kind of how I would approach a mini cut. How I would do it is, if you're at your maintenance or you've been eating above it, I would start by slashing calories however much you're comfortable based on the rate of loss you need to lose. And then from there, like, should you go into a reverse diet? I don't think you would really reverse diet out of a mini cut. You'd pretty much just reset your calories to maintenance. You'll naturally gain a little bit of weight back from the food, and you can kind of say, did I achieve my goal with me resetting that, or did I not lose as much as I thought, or did I lose too much, and you can kind of begin to adjust. And once again, as you can see me saying this, I'm trying not to make it overly complicated or make it too confusing, but as you can see, it is pretty confusing, and it's very hard when it's yourself, because you can be very drastic and dramatic. You could do a mini cut, you could see like you flush out 4 pounds in a couple of days because you've had less carbs. You could go, okay, I'm done. You could start eating way too much. Then you could shoot back up and be like, oh, I wasted my time. This is pointless. And that's where, like, even having a coach to really look at numbers is so, so important. Even I have a new client who we're starting a lean bulk, and I started them pretty high on their calories. Every day their weight kind of dropped down a bit, and like I wanted to make a change, and I'm like, okay, no, there's no need, let's see what happens. Then of course the 4th or 5th day the weight went up like 3 pounds from the starting weight, and sometimes the body's weird like that, and that's where having a coach who can be patient, who can see around corners, and who isn't as emotionally invested as you are. Of course we're invested, but when it's yourself, you get really scared. You're like, I started bulking, I put on 3 pounds in 2 days, so by this rate I'm going to gain like 10 pounds this week. And you can get easily discouraged and stop doing things that would help you, or you could go about it and do things wrong. So that's where you could take this 100 different ways, but hopefully that explains the process, the thought, and the benefit of mini cuts.
Yeah, and even just like where it is tough is mini cuts can also be a bit of a higher number, but just for a shorter amount of time. And where it does get tough is the 3 pound mark that this question is asking, especially because as we had mentioned, like within one day, that could be a change for some people. But I would also encourage people, and this is where it's awesome, even when some people come into our program with these different beliefs that they have, and we can kind of make changes based off of listening to them, but just giving them a goal that makes more sense for them. So sometimes people have a number in their head where it's like, this is what my lowest weigh-in was when I was back in high school or whatever. You really want to hit it, although it may not change your physique as much. Whereas sometimes if we do try to, let's say maybe stay around the same weight, but replace that fat with muscle, which once again, going back to the body recomp, which we specialize in, that alone could drastically change how you feel, how you look, your confidence. And that's where the whole 3 pounds and the scale can kind of be a bit of a tougher situation to manage and control. Whereas the photos that Josh was talking about, the measurements, just everything else that comes together, like this would be a bit more of like a reasonable metric versus that day-to-day kind of 3 pound mark. But yeah, it's a good question. I just wanted to kind of offer a bit of a different perspective and something that I would potentially think of had a client signed up in this type of scenario as well.
Incredibly well said. And I guess a bonus question for you is, what would you recommend for people who maybe have fallen off for 3 weeks or so? Would you say like a mini cut could be useful, or would you say just get back to maintenance and accept the extra weight? Like I assume even for here, like 3 pounds, how would you go about approaching that?
I'd say like for most people, I honestly like just jumping right back to it instead of a ton of mini cuts. And the reason I say that is because I do find a lot of times people will, like, it depends. This one's a bit of a tougher one to answer because I like instantly I start thinking of a lot of different people's scenarios, like having coached so many people over the years. I'm thinking, okay, here's what I did for this person after a vacation. Here's what I did. And as I started to answer that, I was like, you know what, let's just reset. But there are some people where I'm thinking like based off of where they're at, where they want to be. I like to clean up a little bit more or less, like after some sort of fallout or like vacation or whatever the scenario is. There's definitely nothing wrong with just kind of tightening up and cleaning up a little bit to get you back on track. And then there's some people based off of like, if I notice that there's someone who's always feeling like they need to start over again, or just like consistently having like things pop up and stuff like that, I more or less wouldn't exactly do that, because then mentally they start thinking, okay, I can always revert back to a mini cut and kind of go down this rabbit hole. I'm sure Josh has different viewpoints. That's a bit of a tough one, but it's very personal, and that's where the situation is so interesting as well.
I think it's well said. I think when you fall off the wagon, so to say, it's better just to get back to your routine, because overcompensating sometimes when you go too far left, you can kind of mess up your equilibrium. Like if I've been comfortably maintaining at 3,000, I go away for 3 weeks, I put on 5 pounds, and I go, all right, I'm going to do a big old cut. I'm going to eat 2,400 calories. I've probably been eating quite a lot while I was away and off the wagon, so to say. And for me to reset and maybe be dropping my calories like 2,000 might be way too much, and may lead to me rebounding and bouncing out of that negatively and ending up doing more harm and just feeling miserable about the process. Whereas even I really do like that example of just getting back to it, because sometimes even just a really good week at the level you should be at without doing anything drastic, you can examine. If you have a phenomenal week and weight doesn't change and you still have that excess weight, then maybe you can visit having a mini cut and not being drastic. But I find it's so easy to go so far off one side and to be like, I've been overeating, I haven't been moving, now I'm going to go to the gym 7 days a week, I'm going to starve myself out, I'm going to get that weight off, I'm going to do all these things. And then people set these unrealistic expectations, they don't operate at them, and they're adding that complexity like Kyle mentioned in his quote, and they end up falling off. And that's where like so much of it is psychology. And as a coach, I really try to understand who I'm coaching. Some people are so good at being black and white. Like when they're on, they'll do everything perfect. Some people are just happy kind of operating at that 80-90% adherence mark. And some people are somewhere in between. And like, you kind of got to know who you are, how you respond, and what's realistic for you. And I think that was a great answer.
And even when I was answering that, I was also thinking of like, if a mess up happens after one day, like what would I do? I would just go back to regular life. I would learn some lessons from it, and then I'd be like, okay, I'm back on track. And that's definitely what I encourage, versus like the next day or even that night, some people would be like, okay, I got to go burn 1 million calories and I've got to decrease my calories a ton. And it just ends up being this like constantly not so healthy cycle. And it is, once again, more of a personal thing. And that's where it is tough with these questions, but we're always happy to give you different schools of thought, different thinking processes. But yeah, just a bunch of random thoughts there.
All right, and to our second question, and this is from Michaela, and I'm sorry if I butchered that, but we want to start giving everyone a shout out to ask us these amazing questions. And if you would like to submit a question to us, please hit us up on Instagram at Colossusfit. Just DM us your question, say it's for the podcast. And if you have a small question, we're also happy just to answer it right to you. But if you have a good one, something you've been thinking on that you know will benefit not only yourself but others, please hit us up. Even if you don't think it's a great question, we're happy to hear it, because when we get asked the same question multiple times, it's good motivation for us to make just an incredible podcast on it. And also, we're trying to get back to our basics and revisit some of the podcasts that we maybe made 3 years ago with updated information, fresh takes, kind of make them a little more modern. So on Thursday, we're doing like a protein 101 podcast. How much should you be having? What does it do? What's the optimal amount per meal? How much can your body absorb? It's going to be incredibly informative, and I'm going to break it down nice and simple so it doesn't have to be annoying and sciencey. It's going to be very easy to apply to your journey so you can put on more muscle. But we're really planning some incredible episodes going forward, so also make sure to stay tuned for those. But the question is, do you have any recommendations/tips for cravings and different body needs during a woman's period? So obviously, myself or Kyle are not a woman. We haven't gone through PMS, but obviously we have had the amazing opportunity to coach a lot of incredible women. And it's obviously something you need to account for. One thing I'll say is, like, this week is coming. Generally, you have an idea of when it will be or the signs of how it will be. And then obviously there's the severity of how that is for you. It'll be different for every single person. And maybe for you, it's not much of a change. You feel like you can do your workouts just the same. You eat the same. You have no cravings. Boom. You don't need to treat it like anything. But if it's a really hard week for you where it's hard to work out, you're really hungry, you get really demotivated, you kind of need to account for that. And you could always try and leave like your deloads around that week. You could try and be really intelligent about when you go to the gym, how you feel the best. You could be ultra aware of your diet and maybe buy like more fun foods, like pre-cut snacks, different opportunities and abilities to still feel like you're able to eat really good food. And if you get like discouraged and find yourself like just kind of going off during that time, like that's something you need to self-identify and create alternative plans to still succeed within that. So once again, that's where it becomes a little bit of a personal decision and a little bit of a, like I said, a personal thing that you can kind of approach what's best for you. And I find it's easier to give specific suggestions with the individual. But like if you're dying and you're in immense pain and you have crazy pressure and you still can get to the gym, but you have to drop the weights a little bit on that week, it is what it is. You can do what you can. Challenge yourself to do it heavy. See how you feel after it. Sometimes, obviously, like being uncomfortable is not a fun feeling, but these are things you need to evaluate. And another thing I like to compare it with, obviously it's different, but it's like being sick. There's so many different metrics of being sick. Like, do I have a little runny nose that I've had for like 2 weeks? I'm not contagious. I'm washing my hands. I go to the gym. I can still lift. It's very different than if Kyle has like an insane flu and he's like dying and he has body aches and insane fever. He should not be at the gym. Like, our general rule of thumb there is if it's below your head, any signs below your head, you should not be in the gym. It's not going to go well. Then obviously there's the contagious portion as well. Like I said, if it's a really small cold, I think it's okay if you're washing your hands, you're staying away from people, but you really need to evaluate your situation and understand things may be harder during that time. And if you know you crave things, you're going to have to utilize some of those tools. And I created my own question. I've been adding bonus questions for Kyle off of my question, which is, what tips do you have for people who have cravings in general? And I know Kyle's really good at these and he has really amazing suggestions. And for the guys out there that are like, this does not pertain to me, this also can, because when there's situations that are tough, that's oftentimes when we want to crave some joy, some satisfaction. When you're feeling sad, when you're feeling stressed, you just think of food and you think, that's going to make me feel better right now, so I'm going to do it, when in reality, it'll probably make you feel worse later. So what tips do you have for people that are just craving whatever?
Yeah, so this is an amazing question. And I mean, most of you probably know, I definitely will say I have a sweet tooth. I enjoy, some of these fun foods, and it's something that I like. And I think when I used to tell myself I couldn't have it, like, it was very hard because I would crave them more. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate to that as well. And even when it comes to your time of the month as well, like, that time's coming, it's going to be from here to here. And even just for anyone out there, like, being able to understand how you react during those times is amazing because you can prepare for that as well, right? It's, you can't exactly be perfect with it, but you start to understand the different trends. And that's what I do really like about flexible dieting is that if you do have these situations, like it's a lot easier versus someone out there may be another fitness and health coach who says you can only eat keto and you have to stick to these types of foods. It's going to be so hard. And that's why we've created our approach. And for the past almost 10 years, like created a system where if you happen to, have your period for the week, if you're traveling for the week, if whatever, you can find ways to adapt, and we'll give you custom tips throughout that entire process. But honestly, one of my biggest things is just to make it so in Atomic Habits, in order to create habits, he says there's 4 things that need to take place. You need to make it obvious, you need to make it attractive, you need to make it easy, and you need to make it satisfying. And so when I look at kind of creating things that I guess you could say, like when I am trying to create a habit or actually maybe stop a habit, it's better to make something like hard to reach, harder to kind of come to. And what I'm trying to explain here is that if you happen to go grocery shopping and you buy 5 Ben and Jerry tubs for the week because your period's coming and you have a sweet tooth, chances are most of those will be gone within the week. And I think a lot of people struggle with this because they have such easy access to it. I know it's definitely challenging with kids and, the scenarios that come within that. Whereas if you happen to have Greek yogurt bars, and I'm using myself as an example because it was a really hot day, I was craving something, and all I had in my house was these Brookside things from Costco, and it's dark chocolate as well as cranberries. So it's 80 calories for each one. And then there's the Greek yogurt bars, and it's 100 calories for each one. So I had one of those. It was 180 calories. I had my sweet tooth kind of within that day, and it hit the sweet spot. I felt satisfied. I felt good about it. I hit my calories, and instead of having a 1,000 calorie tub of Ben and Jerry's, it knocked everything out, and I was still staying on track. So honestly, above all, it's just taking it easy on yourself, being able to plan ahead, knowing that, hey, if I have to allocate 500 of my calories here, I can still do that. But I think where a lot of people struggle is they go into these situations mentally saying, I'm going to mess up. I can't do it. It's game over, and I may as well consider this a wash. Whereas when you go into it saying, here's how I'm going to plan, here's how I know I'm going to have to adapt, here's what I'm going to have in the fridge to prepare for this. If you have to go outside and go to the grocery store each time you're like, man, I want something sweet, maybe half the time you'll do it, maybe 10% of the time, but by making it less accessible, it'll be easier to stay on track.
Incredibly well said. And now into our last question from Amalia. And the question is, I'm focused on building more muscle. I'm quite lean now, so trying to really define my abdomen and arms. I want cap shoulders. I guess my main question is, how do I stay lean while trying to see muscle growth? Quite simply, the answer I would have here is a lean bulk. When people say bulk, they just assume you're eating everything under the sun. You think, bro, I'm bulking. You're just eating anything. You're taking people's scraps off the table because you're so hungry you need those gains. But that, to me, you can put on a lot of muscle by putting on a lot of fat at the same time, but you'll feel horrible and you'll be quite discouraged. And that is also assuming that you'll have the ability and discipline to be able to stick to a good deficit after that bulk. So I'm not a big fan of this. I think if you're already in a good state, you're lean, you can put on a lot of muscle by being on a really good training regimen, really training strong, really pushing yourself, and being in a slight surplus. So for most people, I'd recommend a really low rate of gain, maybe gain a quarter pound a week to half a pound. Pound a week is a little bit more aggressive for me, and then 2 pounds, you're like on a full-on bulk, or a fulk as some people like to call them. So I would really just take it slow, go to a level you're comfortable with, and even if you do feel like you're being a little aggressive, you can always do those mini cuts. But I think you can put on some really good size by not being overly aggressive, training hard, being an intelligent training regimen, and that is what I recommend for a lot of people that are already lean and they're at this good position where they're ready to grow, they're ready to develop. I don't really think it needs to be made to be much more complicated than that. But if you're looking to get help with your journey, you want to get 5 times faster, guaranteed results, our online coaching is here to help you become our next success story, an incredible transformation. And all you got to do to take advantage is go ahead and DM us the keyword body recomp to our Instagram at Colossusfit, COLOSSUSFIT, and we will take great care of you. We want to thank you everyone for tuning in. It was a phenomenal episode. We really do hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to tune in Thursday for our Protein 101 episode.